Hey folks, welcome back. You're still tuned in with us here on the C Morning Show. So today is special because it's not only filled with one of our signature segments, but two. So it's now time for Book Talk.
Yes, indeed. And even more special today is that we have someone who came all the way from the UAE, from Dubai, and here we will discuss his latest book entitled The Barakah Effect, More with Less. So please join us in welcoming to the studio Muhammed Faris. Sir, Muhammed Faris, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning and welcome to the See Today studio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So happy to be here.
So you're actually this is your last day here. So
Yes.
we happened to catch you before you're on your way out. So you've been here talking about your book, The Barakah Effect. Now, we have a word that's very similar in Indonesia. It's called Barakah. And I believe Barakah is what it is. It's actually Barakah,
Oh, wow.
Barakah Effect. And I think it loosely translates, and talking about it earlier before the show, as blessings.
Yes.
And blessings that can come in many forms. Let's talk a little bit about your book and introduce what the Barakah Effect is.
Oh, sure. So the Barakah Effect is like I call it a spiritual self-help book that literally taps into this ancient concept we have in our tradition. You mentioned the Barakat and Barakah in many other forms. And it's about connecting this concept with our personal and professional lives.
Okay.
So what does it mean to live a life of Barakah, where you are trying to attract Barakah in your life, in your personal life as well as your professional life? So things like the mindsets, the values, and the rituals that you practice that kind of brings that barakah in your life, whether, like you said, through many forms, whether it's through physical manifestations, like, for example, increase in wealth or stability or continuity, or unseen manifestations, whether, for example, when you have peace of mind, ease in facilitation, or just even having a great idea. That's also a type of barakah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I was not aware.
It's like a gift. Like the barakah way it defines like a gift from God. It's a gift that comes into your life that has meaning, purpose, and lasting goodness. That's what's unique about this concept of barakah.
Because there's different ways you can classify it. Like I've read that there's the growth of barakah or barakah, the continuity, and ones that, like you said, is stationary, is within us, correct?
So sometimes, for example, we've been through COVID, right?
Yes.
And just having stability, whether stability in your life, stability in your health, stability in your mental state,
Right.
That's barakah. So barakah is not only the growth materially,
Right.
even stability is a form of barakah in itself.
And we should see that as a blessing as well. Like, don't forget to be thankful when you wake up, just to
Yes.
be healthy, right?
Yes, yeah, there's things we take for granted. Things are granted.
Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit more about how this book perhaps will help us to kind of apply that in our day-to-day life?
So I honestly started this book as I call scratch your own itch, right? So I'm trying to figure it out for myself because I hear this barakah word from my parents, my grandparents. It's so common, especially among our elders, talk about barakah. I was like, what is barakah? I'm trying to define barakah and also how to track, how to bring into our life.
Right.
I realized that barakah we can attract in three ways. One is the mindsets. For example, having an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset.
Okay.
That attracts barakah. Values. Values such as mercy and compassion. Values such as being focused on not just this world but the next life and what that means for it. And also rituals. Rituals like yes, of course, there's prayer and fasting. Ramadan is starting soon. But also rituals such as feeding people and just being of service to community. So these are all ways you can attract barakah through mindsets, values, and rituals.
Yeah, and many of them, we looked it up through the internet, and there's so many ways you can do it. Reading the Quran would be just a simple one, but there's so many things. You can say your prayers. You can also get married. Like this is something that is barakah as well, and we have that belief here as well.
We do.
We say that as a good Muslim should marry and procreate.
Yes.
Creating children, right? And that's part of what you're bringing blessings to yourself.
And that's the thing, with a lot of time with barakah, we always think it's the rituals part.
Yes.
But what I was trying to introduce to the book is don't forget the mindsets. For example, having good intentions.
Yeah.
And sometimes you might be in a situation and you might be struggling with something, just resetting your intentions and having good intentions has a barakah. God sees that intention and adds barakah to whatever you're trying to do through that intention. So even subtle things like that where we don't often think about, we always think about the rituals, the action. But again, mindsets, values, those also play a role in attracting barakah in your life.
Okay, I have a follow-up question because the subtitle of this book, or this one that's slightly a smaller word, says more with less.
Yes.
So is that what you mean? More with
Yes.
less?
For example, the way I try to explain barakah sometimes is, wake up in the morning and you get so much done in the morning.
Yes.
Right? So there's actually a prophetic saying, Prophet Muhammad said, the early hours, there's barakah in them. So you're actually experiencing barakah. Or for example, let's say you invite people over your house.
Sure.
And you expect like 5 people, but then 10 people show up, right?
Right.
Okay.
But the food is enough, right?
Yeah.
You kind of worried, oh my God, I have enough, but that barakah of the food is enough for everybody.
I get what you mean.
Yes.
Yeah. It's almost as if things will always happen in the way that you somehow hope that they will happen.
Happen, and also it's more with less. Like sometimes we live in this world, more is more. Like I
Yes.
want more
Yeah.
things, more
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like you don't need more. Sometimes it's like the less you have, whether it's time, whether it's wealth, whether you might live in a small apartment, but you have a barakah in that apartment, you feel like you live in a palace.
Right.
You might have like 1 or 2 children instead of like 10 children, but that 1, 2 child is like such a blessing for you.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
those 10 children might be even maybe a struggle for you. So sometimes it depends on how barakah. Sometimes it can be little, but when there's barakah in the small things, the benefit and the peace of mind and the ease is lasting.
A little bit like glass half empty, half full.
Exactly.
Like,
It's all
you
about
look at it,
changing your perspective, changing your
Absolutely.
mindset, as you mentioned, isn't it? I'm curious about the connection between this book, The Barakah Effect, and the other book that you've written as well. Or I should say, before all of that, actually. You mentioned, Barakah Effect, more with less, but you also wrote The Productive Muslim, which we actually already have here as well.
Yes.
You wrote this in 2017, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
didn't you? Is this more of like a continuation of The Productive Muslim, or would you say that this is kind of like a refinement, perhaps? Or would you say that you've provided new ideas in this book?
It's funny, when I first wrote this book, I wrote this book trying to understand what is the connection between Islam as a faith and productivity, right, as a
Right.
concept. And one of the key links that was made there was this idea of barakah. So it was kind of introduced in this book, but then I took that concept and I just kind of expanded a bit more. Expanded in this
I
book,
see. A lot more.
literally,
Yeah.
literally.
It's almost twice as big, isn't it? Yeah.
And so this is more. I thought, so this is the practical guide of
Right.
and this is more the philosophical underpinnings
Yeah.
Okay.
of this book. So it's interesting how it all worked out. But again, it wasn't one of the grand plans. More like you kind of, I call follow the breadcrumbs. Sometimes you find one thing, and the next thing, oh, this is the next.
That's true.
You can almost say this is a barakah, and it's
There you go. And actually, I'm happy to say that the Productive Muslim has also been translated to Bahasa Indonesia already.
Right.
And I think the Barakah Effect will soon also be translated to Bahasa. So I'm hoping that the Indonesian market in general will get access to both books as well.
Yeah, I think my mom might have the Productive Muslim book actually. So
Really?
yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting. So let's talk a little bit about that. You mentioned Indonesians. Indonesia has the largest Muslim population of any country in the world. Obviously, the religion does have a strong hold here in the country. One of the things that I read as well about Barakah or Barakah is that obeying Allah's command and restraining from those that are forbidden, anything, which is actually in time for Ramadan. A lot of
Right,
times we're gonna show a lot of restraint throughout the next month. Why is it important, do you think, for Indonesians to familiarize themselves more with the Barakah effect?
That I feel like I'm just reintroducing a concept that all Indonesians know. Like I said, I'm sure you heard about Barakah many times, so
Right.
especially from my elders. And I think sometimes what I'm doing is I'm repackaging it in a modern way, in a way that's accessible to younger generation, in a way that's practical. Because sometimes we hear this idea, we hear this concept, like, yeah, I understand what you're trying to say, but what does it actually mean?
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that I'm simply bringing back something that all Indonesians know by heart, but it's now like putting into practice, and what does it mean for the daily life?
Absolutely, I agree with you because not everyone can just pick up the Quran and read it. I mean, in fact, for those like myself, like Mu'alaf, I was not born a Muslim. It actually took an ustad, someone who was able to explain the teachings in a modern way. So he was actually an IT professor. And he's like, he said, come to me with a new question, or one or two or three questions every week. So I would go to see him weekly, and he would take what I asked him. For example, can you give me an example as to why you have to pray 5 times a day? But what he did was he didn't just say, well, because the book says so, but
Right.
he applied it to how I could relate with it. And I think that is what you're trying to do here.
Like one of my mission is to make Islam relevant again, right? Sometimes we kind of took it basically by default versus really almost like reintroducing ourselves to our own faith and realizing the power it has to in our personal and professional lives.
Right.
So these concepts are already there, but just like, what does it really mean in a modern context? That's what I try to do with our books, basically.
That's interesting. I'm really looking forward to reading this book, actually.
Same.
In the studio, yeah.
Appreciate
That's
that.
absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and for
you.
making this. Is this your last stop before
It is
you
my last stop for getting to the airport. So.
Wow, thank you so much.
What are your destinations after this? Are you going to be talking about this elsewhere in another country, or?
Yes, so Indonesia was my first stop. So I launched the book first in Indonesia, and we'll definitely be doing other regional tours with Malaysia, Singapore, as well as we're going eastwards, right? Going to go
Amazing.
to Dubai and then hopefully US and go see how it goes.
Wow.
All over the world, shout out.
All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you
and
so
best
much.
of luck with
Appreciate
the
you
rest
all.
of
Thank
your
you so
tour.
much. Thank you.
Appreciate having you on the program.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank
So
you.
this has been Book Talk.
Yeah, it's been a great talk. Yeah, I have
Great
to
one.
say.
Appreciate it.
I'm really looking forward to reading this book, especially. All right, we're going to take another break, but when we come back, we'll have some updates from around Southeast Asia. So stay tuned on the C Morning Show, only on See Today.